Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, a citizen of the universe and a passage keeper and mentor for our new Earth children. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality, and it is meant to embody deeper trust and ways into solid self-love and fearless integrity. Our new world energy of spirit babies needs us to consciously create within conception, trust pregnancy, and have freedom to birth and parent from innate wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 246, May 2026, Motherhood After the NICU, Supporting Body, Mind, and Spirit. How do you support your newborn during and after time spent in the NICU? What practices are deeply healing for you and baby? Are you aware of what it means to have a regulated nervous system? How can you and baby thrive towards wholeness? I'm excited. A special guest here, Atara. Say hi.
Hi, Kelly, and hi, everyone out there listening.
And I always like to share how I meet people. And a lot of people know I've said this on Spirit Baby Radio for we just hit our 10-year anniversary, is that I like to invite people because I want to be inspired. And I found Atar through, am I going to say the name of the Tina's, is it Black Sheep? What is it?
Yes. Is it Black Sheep Therapist?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And she does really great things in bridging the science of psychotherapy and social work and science into holistic. Like she gives the language so people don't get in trouble, or we can, so much more than that. And so I don't know what it was. There was something, it was like something popped in and I clicked on her profile and I was like, okay, I want her on my podcast.
I love it. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, we have definitely been chatting before we started recording, and there's so much crossover and connection. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, and I want to share a little bit about you in the sweet bio. Atara is a licensed marriage family therapist and has been practicing in the field of mental health for 14 years. She continued her education by becoming a certified integrative somatic practitioner. Her current passions include holistic healing, supporting postpartum mamas, brain spotting, therapeutic intensives, and educating on the role of minerals for brain health and nervous system regulation. Revitalization and rebalancing clients are her core goals. Thank you again so much for being here.
I love that. Yeah, what a great little synopsis of all of the directions we can go when we're working with clients.
Yeah, and some of the things I actually just want to read this off of your website because I feel like we're going to kind of grow into this. And I was like, oh yeah, I was just, looking at some notes. And some of these things you say is understand why your body still feels stuck in survival mode. Release the trauma your nervous system's learning during the NICU.
Mhm.
Calm and constant, something could be wrong feeling. Stop fighting your body, start working with it.
Mm,
Experience motherhood with presence, peace, and confidence.
mm,
So I want to step into that because really my passionate energy to bring the conversation forward. And everybody knows, like, I have somatic psychology training, so I love the somatic work. I
mm.
actually went to this health expo and I was like, are you guys MFTs, MFWs, And I think they were MFTs. And the one woman I said, so what do you do? And she was saying
Mm.
who she's worked with. And I go, no, 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 like what is your like modality? And then
Right.
she said somatic work. And I said, this was not good because she couldn't define it for me.
Oh no. Oh.
And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And then she's like, well, it's
Uh-huh.
body. And I go, no, no, no. I says, I'm trained in somatic psychology. So like, what would that be? And I was very kind about it, but
Mm,
I threw her through a loop. And so I know that somatic psychology in this field is a very precious field because we've studied
mm,
it so deeply. And
mhm,
I know there's a lot of people out there that are just like, I'm somatic therapist, but they may not be. But I want
mhm,
to go deeper into that because I know that you bring so much skill and different levels to to mothers, to babies. And
mm.
kind of shifting back in here, the reason why I really reached out was around the NICU and the infant. And
Yeah.
Atara has this really beautiful program. So
Mm,
let's say, you had your babies in the NICU, and I've personally have worked in that space
mhm.
with babies in it and coming out
Wow.
of it telepathically.
Oh,
Yeah, to get,
wow.
and there's a lot of validation when I do it. It's not, it's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah. Sometimes nurse names come up, sometimes what baby mom and dad need. Things
Wow.
come up in very pre unpredictable ways. But
Yeah.
so I have a really strong heart space for our infants, and I want to hear, what is your perception of the NICU and like what is your experience and why did you create that program? Because our children are important.
Yes. Well, yeah, and such a great question. Even as you said that, Kelly, I'm imagining what that experience would have been like to have you, right? And to have had you while we were going through that. And I'm just imagining what comfort that could have brought us, right? So to put it really succinctly, because my whole story would take a couple hours to tell, but essentially I have 4 children, my first 3 of which were all unexpected NICU stays. Yeah. And they were all full term. So that, so I think a lot of people assume that a NICU baby is a preterm baby, but I forget the numbers. I think it's something like 70% actually are not even premature. They're full term babies. And
Oh,
those
okay.
were, yeah, and those were
I didn't
my
know that.
kiddos. So my first was meconium aspiration. It was a very
Mm.
long, arduous labor, 32 hours. We had to transfer from a birth center to the hospital where he was eventually born. I am so thankful for my midwife that went with me because she was a nurse midwife, meaning she had experience in the hospital previously. She really advocated for me, and I really attribute um, having the kind of birth, meaning a vaginal birth, with my
Mm.
first because of her advocacy. So shout out to Nancy Pohl, she's amazing. My second was a also a hospital transfer because she was born what was called GBS positive, if you're familiar out there, which is just a type of infection that can get transferred, and she ended up being septic, and that was, yeah, very, very, probably the most traumatic experience. She had to have a spinal tap, and it was a lot. And then our third, also we suspect was GBS positive, but we actually were never told really what happened. But his temp dropped about 4 hours after birth. He was my birth center success story. Born in the tub, because I was like, I'm just not getting out. This is
I
great
know
here.
that feeling.
Yes, yeah, and he ended up being born in there, but anyways, we had to transfer fairly quickly after birth. So that is why I do what I do, is because I've lived it, and what I really saw was a gap in care, and that gap is for moms, because understandably, babies are the identified patients as they go into the NICU. But what happens for moms is there's a lot of unnatural separation. There's a lot
Mm.
of removal from the natural environment, because babies are kept in isolates. They're kept in rooms for days, months on end sometimes. An example here that I like to use is my firstborn. We started with the lungs and the breathing issues, but by day 3, because he hadn't seen the sunshine, what do you think started to happen? Jaundice.
Jaundice,
Yes,
yeah.
right. And so, actually, where a little funny story with him is, they were like, well, we're still concerned about his bilirubin numbers, but you know what? We'll let him go home with you tonight. But can you bring him back in the morning, and we'll check them again, and then he'll be officially discharged. And so what did we do? We sat in the sun that morning for about 15, 20 minutes and took him back to be tested. And they're like, he looks great. And I was like, yeah,
Ah.
because he saw the sun, right? He got into the environment that he was created to be in. And
Oh,
now
I
that is,
love that. The way you just
yeah,
said that.
yeah, and not to
Yeah.
knock the NICU. I know, these are medically fragile babies, but to your point, there's so much that is getting disrupted that I don't think we fully recognize. And so my program focuses on moms and nervous system, and getting your nervous system back into a more regulated space. After what you endured and went through in the NICU, because I really recognize within myself that lack of care and
Mm.
recognition from the NICU, even from the understanding of a therapist afterwards. And so I think it's so important that we understand the impact of the NICU on mom and baby and that dyad.
Do you get to bring that to the local community in the hospitals and have those conversations?
Kelly, I am trying. I am
Really?
trying. Yeah,
Okay.
I have the privilege of connecting with a lot of social workers. My
Yeah.
goal long term would be to have a program like this in placement for
Mm,
moms to have cohorts that, hey, if you were
yeah.
discharged from this time to this time, here's an option that the hospital is funded, and please go through.
Yes.
And so they could get the material and have some group support along the way as well, because as I'm sure you know, we really learn best relationally and in
Yeah.
community. So that is my
That
long-term
would be
goal.
amazing. I see you do.
Yeah,
That's why I was like, wait a minute. And then you're even running some of these groups or,
exactly.
implementing it, get it. But I know to get things running and maybe grant money or things, of course, there has
Mm-hmm.
to be some some yeah, I know there's a lot of weird rules with medical things too,
Yeah.
but what a gift it would be for the
Mm-hmm.
health of the mother and child that they're not coming back and visiting because
Absolutely.
as we know with trauma, the
Mm,
emotion it's not just, emotional, but there's physical and spiritual energetic things that get like perpetuate
absolutely.
maybe even negative outcomes because there's no, right, like deeper expression. And
Mm-hmm.
how are you doing that? That's what I want to. So you maybe you see a mom or even a father and they've gone through this really intense experience. What I know you do a lot of really cool things. That's why I'm like,
Mm,
what would that look like when you're kind of assessing and what would you give them to begin to integrate that whole experience that they do want to put behind them?
right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I love that you said that, because I definitely, after the first, maybe even the second NICU experience, I remember in my mind thinking, I just want to move on with my life. I just want to move on with I don't want to think about it. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to keep moving forward. And now, knowing what I know about the nervous system, I can recognize, and really didn't take, it took me until about my third kiddo to recognize how in real time, right, what was happening was how it showed up for me was really what we would label or call postpartum anxiety. Um,
Okay.
but you and I know that's just a nervous system
Yeah.
dysregulation. It's a message from the body of like, hey, we were in survival mode and facing life or death. You
Yeah.
did not know, right? At some points there's a fear that your baby was not going to survive.
Yeah.
And so the signal and messages that we got was this is not safe. And how I talk about it with moms is you entered motherhood in survival mode, even if it was your second,
Whoa.
third
Yeah.
kiddo, right? And so the brain pairs those together of
Mm.
motherhood, being present with your baby, being a mother, maybe even breastfeeding, right? All the intricacies of what that
Yeah.
looks like with survival mode. And so the system holds
Wow.
on to
Yeah.
that, right? And then that will show up in the day-to-day after you're released from the NICU. Another kind of phrase that I recognize lands a lot is you left the NICU, but your body did not leave the NICU.
You know what this reminds me of? Because it's
Mm,
really activating in me is like I had a home
mm,
birth hospital transfer,
okay.
and then coming off of that, coming home, I
Mm,
had emotional and physical trauma that I had like I was
that's
totally in
right.
that. So that, I'm wondering, do you work with that community too as well? Like someone like maybe the
Absolutely.
baby's not in the NICU, but they're like because that language you just said was like I needed that language
Absolutely.
because I was in
Yes.
survival and I admit this, like I'm not
Mm,
ashamed that when I had my little son, I looked at him and I had no feelings.
yep. This whole functional freeze
Yeah.
is what we call that, right?
Yeah,
Is
I was like, I'm supposed to like love him and be really
yeah,
like, and I was just
yeah,
kind of like, okay, he's here. It took me
yeah.
no joke, 2.5 weeks, one day, I
Mm,
must have been more relaxed. And I did
mm,
like deep self-care for a full
mm,
year. I was like not working, really just hanging out with the baby, like me. I
mm,
was lucky to do that and
mhm,
trying to get the support I needed. But I felt like this burst of light through my whole body, and it
mm.
felt like love a mother has for her child. And I
Ah,
was
it's
like,
beautiful.
that's what I was supposed to get when I gave birth in that moment. And I didn't.
And you
Thank
didn't.
God it actually came. Like I was,
Yeah.
because I could have kept living, right? In
Mhm.
that space. And
Yes.
we see that with moms. I worked in a short moment, I worked an internship with attachment parenting. Specifically,
Mm.
I did like well off like West Side moms, but I also worked in teen homes in South Central.
Oh, whew,
And
that's intense.
yes, yeah, and you wonder like because there was so much disorganized attachment with the
Yeah.
babies. They
Yes.
didn't know how to connect with their moms, and I think
Right.
I realized that like that could have been my reality,
Yes. Yes,
you
absolutely.
know?
And I think about what you said, and I think then the story that we tell ourselves, right? And what we end up feeling is a lot of
Yeah.
shame when
Yeah.
we have this like preconceived notion, I should,
Yeah,
right? I
I was like, I'm supposed
should,
to love my baby, and I felt nothing.
right,
You
right.
can't say that out loud to people.
No, most people don't understand that or
Yeah.
give you a look, right? Which then doubles down on the shame of,
Yes.
wait, you're what? So you're experiencing what?
Yeah.
And then moms were, oh, I'm not normal. This isn't
Yeah.
normal. I'm wrong or bad for experiencing this. When really all it is your body and nervous system attempting to keep you safe. And I'm so glad
Yeah.
to hear for you that you were able to find and connect with that fairly quickly. When I look
I
at
couldn't
NICU
believe it.
moms, yeah, it takes a
Yeah.
lot longer. But the goal is just what you said, right? Is to get
Yeah.
back to safety so your nervous system goes, it is safe to feel that. I don't have to
Yeah,
be
right?
afraid to feel that.
Well,
Yeah.
something literally, I was talking to a friend yesterday who's in her mid 30s and she's opening, I want to have a baby, right? And
Mm.
something we had a lot, I have a lot of conversations around that. And
Mhm.
something came up around, yeah, I said to her, this was interesting. And I said to her that I felt like I gave birth in dysregulation. And she was like,
Ah.
"Really?" Like,
Mhm.
"Huh?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Yeah, I knew I was very dysregulated because not only I felt like it was already dysregulated before, but then the trauma
Mm.
happened and it brought me into such survival." And I told her, but then what I had to
Mhm.
do is it was years of repair, to be honest, for
Yeah.
me.
Same.
It was because I didn't realize how my son showed me how dysregulated I was.
Yes.
I was like, okay, the initiation is on. And I had to work,
Yeah.
and I felt like he was a high needs child energetically,
Mhm.
nursing, wanted me to hold him all the time. And guess what I did?
Mhm.
I fucking
Mhm.
did it all. Like I
Mm.
did it.
Mm.
I did it. And
Yeah.
then I look at now, I felt like a long year of a lot of repair. And now
Mm.
I'm very proud of he's turned 15 and
Oh.
he hit puberty and he's so like present and very in his
Mm.
body because I felt
Mm.
like he wasn't in his body a lot.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
was a big deal. And it was
Yeah.
like, yeah, and we don't know, but I feel like I want you to talk more about that as I feel like
Mhm.
mother's regulation has everything to do with babies. And it's not,
That's
I
right.
know there's guilt and shame in that because I did. I was like, oh my God, I'm messing up my kid.
Right.
I thought that,
Right.
right? Don't we all think
Yes.
that though?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think we get sold this bar of perfection, right? Is like to be regulated is to be calm 24/7. And that is not it, friends. That is not it. But to be regulated is not to be
That's true.
afraid of the feelings when
Yeah.
they come up, right? And not to go into that panic of I can't be angry or I can't be upset. I can't be sad. I can't be all of these less comfortable emotions that we experience as humans. But the more that we can experience that in a safe way, even I coach a lot of moms even in front of our children, right?
Yeah.
Is really good to do that. But yeah, moms get left with a lot of
Mm,
this. The word I'm getting is residue, right? There's a lot of residue from the NICU, which then turns into this fear of I will never, I hear it a lot of like, I'll never catch up, we'll never be normal. A lot of fear around bonding, right?
yeah.
I'll never be the the close contact because baby can be soothed by nurses so much more often because mom
Mm-hmm.
feels like they're not there as often as they can. All of this like fear and again shame that comes up, and so really helping guide the dyad right back, because the way that I say it is mom is really like the heartbeat of the home,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So when we're in a good place, right, and we can recognize our emotions, our sensations, that then supports baby. We know this so well. The research is like there's a plethora of research out there on that dyad relationship, And when we can be regulated and centered, then it helps and supports the baby. One of the things I hear a lot from NICU moms too is, yeah, an unsettled baby. We hear the
Mm,
terminology like a colicky baby, a
yeah.
clingy baby. You mentioned attachment earlier. A Velcro baby, right, is one of the languages
Yes.
that we hear.
A
And
Velcro baby. That's
a
a good
Velcro,
one.
yeah, I like that one.
That was
Um,
him.
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking my firstborn too, right? And my second had a more independent. She still does
Yeah.
very much a strong-willed, independent spirit. But she's the one who had the spinal tap and
Yeah.
yeah, such invasiveness. And what I how I see that show up now is her emotions go right, and they get really
Mm.
big really
Hmm.
fast. The visual I'm
Wow.
seeing is her once being so angry, she grabbed the her bed frame and went, she squeezed it, went, ah, I'm so angry, and even lifted it a little bit.
Nice. That's some good work, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay,
Awesome.
get that out, girl, right?
Yes.
But that's I think back to what she experienced, right, in the NICU. And I mean, having a spinal tap is not
Yeah.
minor. And so
It's not.
maybe this emotion, right, that was in her and that just kind of welled up in that moment, and just her system trying to replay that and experience that all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so curious, Kelly, about what the work that you did with the families in the NICU. I would just love to hear a bit about, like, gosh, what that was like. What I yeah, how much of the details you can
Yeah, I
share.
want to spotlight something you just said for those that are tuning
Mm,
in. When your daughter's going through this, and you said something which I know is a very somatic term, but other people may not
mm,
get it. You
mhm.
watch her go through the completion.
Yeah.
See,
Yes.
this is the big piece. And
Yes.
people, I think sometimes adult minds and brains are very different of like,
Mm,
what does that mean? It's like what you
mhm.
just shared to me is like you offered a beginning, middle, and end, and it's her end, not your end. Because
Exactly.
parents are well-meaning, like, don't do that, or you're making it really what they're saying is you're making me uncomfortable. I can't handle my emotions. So
Right.
when people come and they have like issues with their baby,
Mhm.
sometimes they're in the session and they'll hold them and we'll talk about the birth story. And guess what? The baby starts
Mm,
kicking up through really higher,
mhm,
intense. And I
mhm.
observe that. I'm seeing that. And
Yeah.
then oftentimes, for some reason, with my energy,
Mm,
adults and babies sleep very well that night.
mm,
I
mm.
people report I don't know what's happening. I get reports back. Like it's the craziest thing. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And it like you said, it's the disbursement of energy and it looks different for everybody as we know.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
again, I want to spotlight that like you
Mm,
let her complete whatever her experience is. And
yeah.
I know as parents, we do get in the way. Think about we all have been through where your mom or dad are like, don't be quiet right now, or maybe we've
Mhm.
done it, or
Mhm.
okay, let's go,
Right.
what's happening. And so I remember my firstborn had like a tantrum in the middle of like the mall. And I'm
Mm.
just like, all right, he's just gonna do this right now. And I'm like, I get really,
Yes.
for some reason, I get really quiet and grounded when I see bigger energies.
Mm.
And maybe it's
Mm.
how I held the space of my family because I didn't
Yeah.
know what else to do, right? And
Mhm.
so I remember him doing that, and I said, okay, we'll go. It's time to go because I
Mm.
get it. He didn't have a lot of words. He's a
Mm.
very expressive energy, and I
Mhm.
just waited it out. Like I literally
Yes.
waited and just watching it. And we don't
Yeah.
usually it's like I'm frustrated or I'm just tired, and I've lost my stuff. Like
Mm.
my kids joke, they said, "Remember that time you broke that chalkboard?" Because I was so overdone.
Mm.
I was not very mineralized. I was nursing and I felt
Mm.
very depleted. And I
Yep.
noticed that not only was I tired often with the kids, but I felt like I was angry. And I
Yes.
realized the anger and I'm exploding it inward and other times it come out.
Mhm.
And one time I
Mhm.
got so mad, I think I threw a pencil. I don't even know what happened. It broke this
Mm.
like end of this chalkboard. And they talked about my older one talked about it for years.
Oh, yeah, never
Remember
let
when
you
mommy
forget.
was really angry?
Yeah.
And the good thing is boys like they're allowed to be angry, right? It's different.
Mm.
So
Yes.
then I just confirm that and go, yeah, remember when I was angry?
Mhm. Yeah.
And for
Normalize
them, it
it.
was so normal. They loved it, to be honest, later.
Mm. Mm.
Because parts of, I'm not going to hurt them, but I'm thinking, I want to, throw you through the chalkboard. I'm like, but then
Mhm.
I'm of sane mental. I'm just like, okay. And I just reacted and threw that.
Right.
And then it was just kind of like, it's just funny, like for me to look back later, and it's happened so long ago, but it's like they get angry. They're
Mm,
like, yeah, like I get angry and maybe I'm gonna break something,
mhm,
or I'm gonna use my words, or I'm gonna
mm,
play with something, or
mm.
I'm gonna cry or scream, and then they move out of it. Like it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes. Yes.
so yeah.
I love that so much. And I think about, yeah, thank you for pausing there as well, because what you're talking about is well known in the world we've worked in for a long time. But for clients, it's kind of, oh, a fresh concept. I think about too when kids are injured. And I think this comes up a lot for NICU moms, is because we weren't able to rush in and save when we
Mm.
wanted to. There's a high propensity for that. I've lived that. Is like, I want to soothe, I want to
Oh
pacify because
yeah.
I didn't get the opportunity to when I felt like I should have. I'm putting that in quotes for those of you who are listening and can't see me,
So how do you
right?
remedy that? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, first we want to recognize, right, within the mom or the dad, what is that about? What is happening? Let's like name it, right? And then how can we move from that into, like you're saying, recognizing within ourselves, right? We have to regulate, we have to find that calm, and then allowing our child to go through that process to not stop
Mm.
it. Um,
There you go.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so a great example, our neighbor, our wonderful, beautiful neighbor, gave my kids skateboards. And I was like, next time, give me a warning so I can buy more band-aids,
Wow.
right? Because
Yeah. Get ready. Yes.
lots of scrapes this week. And my second born, she went down real hard, right? So instead of what my natural inclination is, it's okay, calm down, we're okay, right? That kind of pacifying. I just allowed her to like have that moment. It's like you said, to go all the way through to wail. I mean, this girl has lungs, right? she all the way from birth, when we transferred in the ambulance, that nurse was like, "Whoo, your baby's got some lungs on her." So that is lived true.
Yeah.
And I just let her wail. I didn't
She wants
try
to
to.
make sure you hear her. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. And then
Yeah.
you'll see them, right? If you let them stay in
Yes.
that,
Completion.
they'll find
Yes.
the completion. They come and calm
Yeah.
on themselves, and then there's the reach,
And they
right?
don't have to
There's
be 100% too.
no,
And
no, no,
here's the
no.
thing I'm going to say, those that are tuning in, maybe you're struggling. Here's the two things I'm going to say. Watch
Mm,
that you have to buy them a gift or feed them food. We
mm-hmm.
don't need to.
Right, right. And I did that. Speaking of that, I did that with my fourth once. And I was
See,
like,
you'd like, we
"Oh,
all
God,
do it.
yes,
We all
yeah, we
do
all
it.
do it sometimes, exactly." And then every time, and you're right, I'm trying, and now she's 3, so she's itty
Yeah.
bitty still, but I'm
Aw.
trying to say to her, like, "Well, we can find the calm within ourselves. We don't need to reach for something to calm. And how can we do that?" And maybe we'll try to have her do an extended exhale, or teach
Aw.
her, what does your
3 is
body
so
need?
young. I
3 is
know.
so young and it's so precious, but they're
Yeah.
not yet tainted by the
Yeah.
social norm and
But
expectation.
then she
And
has all her
so
siblings to learn from too.
absolutely.
But I
Yes.
think we
Yeah.
all do that. Like, let me go for the food or love. And it's not about
Mhm.
shaming anyone. I think we all do
No.
that. But I see it a lot with like a friend I grew up like in the
Mm,
past years and where I used to live. They would do it too much. Where I'm
mhm.
like, okay, now it's like, you don't feel good. I'm going to give you a reward. It's like,
Right.
because the parent can't sit with the discomfort.
Yes, great point, great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then that gets paired, right, in our
Yeah.
brain, and my brain then
Yes.
goes, "I'm hurting, I'm uncomfortable,
Yeah.
I need to buy something, or I need
Yes.
to eat something,"
Yeah.
like you just said. Yes,
Wow.
and
And this is probably people that are older, like, well, I am a compulsive shopper and eater.
yes, well, I get a lot
Because
of
it's
those,
that,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a subconscious
Mhm,
reward. And I know it's different,
mhm,
but I want to go back to something so working with babies in the NICU, like what is it from my perspective?
mhm,
I do work with Spirit Baby. I'm working with the before energies and pregnancy. But what I've learned throughout the years is that I'm very telepathic. And my
mhm,
telepathy is beginning, I feel like it's improving. Or maybe
mhm,
there's a recognition of it. So when I'm
mhm,
tuning into the baby, I can feel them. I know where they are. And
mhm,
sometimes I'll ask them like, "How are you doing? What are you feeling? What do you want
mhm,
to tell mom and dad?" And I don't need to see
mhm,
anybody. I don't need to see
mhm,
anybody.
Mm.
And they give me descriptions sometimes of blanket covers, or
Mm.
one time I got a nurse's name. That doesn't happen a lot.
Wow.
And they
Yeah.
felt like this one baby felt like the nurse was really giving them so much love.
Oh.
And we wanted to celebrate that. And what you said earlier is what I do is I give hope and
Mm-hmm.
comfort. That's
Exactly.
really what I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of the parents are already doing the things. I'm
Mm.
affirming
Mm.
that, like, oh, your baby wants a little piece of your smell. So give them, I would tell them, like, rub something on the boobage, put it
Yes.
in there, and like baby
Yes.
wants to smell that.
Oh.
And they connect with that energy. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it's everyone is so different. Every
Mm.
baby is so different on the journey
Mm-hmm.
after. I actually worked with this one. It was so beautiful, this family and this little boy, and he's actually was going in and out of heart surgeries.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it got to the point where, like I said to her, at one point she was sitting on the bench and they needed so much. And I was like,
Mm.
I even said, why don't you do GoFundMe? And she was like, no, I don't do that. And she actually ended up doing it. And they had such an amazing response. I said, you're living in the hospital. I
Oh.
said,
Yes.
everything is about your baby. And,
Mm-hmm.
but I actually energetically, I felt like I worked with them through donation and pro bono a little bit with this family.
Okay.
I
Mm.
felt like it was the energy of this being. I felt like he wanted to thrive.
Mm. Oh,
He really
powerful.
wanted to
Yeah.
survive through, and he just
Mm-hmm.
needed time and space and energy. And sometimes people will ask me, it's a hard one for parents to hear. They'll be like, how do they feel?
Mm.
So I can feel in the baby's body if they've had certain chemicals that are needed
Mm.
for their survival. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they're not uncomfortable by it.
Right. Such a great
If they're,
point.
yeah. So this
Yeah.
is where I said, that's where I really want to normalize the okayness. Like that baby may need that intervention, but it does create a lot of feeling and uncomfortableness. I'm very conscious with my words and cautious.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm looking at that, I'm just like, what does, he or she need right now? And
Mm.
are they getting it from you? And again, I feel like a lot of parents are really doing the best they could. But
Right.
something else you said earlier, which felt really good to talk about now,
Mm.
is it sounds like when you're like, I'm taking him home, and yes, the hospital has their procedures, their ideas, and their fears, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, you knew instinctually this baby needs sun. My babe needs some sun.
Right.
And
Right.
then they're bringing him in like, oh, this is great. And I want to talk about that intuitive mother instinct. It's
Mm-hmm.
there. Even in
It's
the
there.
fright and the fear and the
Yes.
terror, your
Yeah.
baby is so,
Mm.
cellularly, energetically
Mm-hmm.
connected to you. And
Mm-hmm.
I really want to, that's a really big energy for me to promote because I do feel
Yes.
like that bonding and attachment, yeah, it's been a little restructured from the
Right.
foundation.
Right.
But I feel like what you were just sharing is like, but we can move through completion. And
That's
I
right.
tell with birth psychology, .com,
Mm.
that whole
Mm-hmm.
organization, I don't think people realize like, oh, if my baby's been through trauma and then I'm moving on. And I said, no, they can complete
Yeah.
through their play, through their movement, you can do it. And I
Absolutely.
really promote that for parents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a
Yes.
little bit of like kind of
Yeah.
again, because the parents are ultimately in charge of the situation. And I know
Mm-hmm.
they're scared, but I do this in all my work is like, what is your instincts? What is your own intuition?
That's right.
Even some
That's right.
people have said to me, oh, I want to get this medical procedure. And I said, I'm not giving you that information. I
Right.
said, what do you feel? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if
Mm-hmm.
baby needs to have something done, it's like, what do you feel? And some parents feel like, I don't think they need it. And I said, you're going to have to like sit with that
Yes.
and go,
Absolutely.
maybe I'll go with my yes, or
Yeah.
maybe we'll try something a little different. I says, because
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned in that world of infancy is that infants are unpredictable. They don't,
Mm-hmm.
science and doctors get very confused.
Mm.
Like they can have anomalies in their bodies or really terrible things, and all of a sudden they don't. I
It's
don't
true.
know. They're little miracle
Yeah.
buns. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like they're so fresh from divinity. Their body maybe like rapidly
Yeah.
heals outside of science. I can't
Yes.
explain it. So
Yeah.
what I've been told is like infants are kind of like that's why they have children's hospitals. What do we do
Mm-hmm.
with these
Mm-hmm.
little miracle anomalies of light? And like so baby can get really unwell and then they could just completely fine. And
Mm.
this is where maybe you can talk about like well, maybe you can like trusting intuition has a lot to do with the nervous system, no?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was just
Let's
going
talk
to
about
say.
that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, which is I think why so many moms especially get um jumbles in the NICU is because there's such a heightened dysregulation first of all, physically, you've just gone through something major, right? There was a recent study that came out of like, it's like the equivalent to running 6 marathons or something like
Oh my
that, right?
gosh.
Just
One
like,
is hard enough.
right. Just an insane
Wow.
amount of energy. Oh, that's what they were saying. It's the most energetically taxing
Oh, yeah.
events the human body could ever do. So you've just gone through that, and you go from that to jumping straight into that crisis, life or death survival mode. And then your system has to make a really hard switch. You kind of were talking about earlier, right? Like this need or desire to recover, to, you know, really even just like push pause to, and that doesn't feel like an option for
Mm,
most NICU moms. And so the
yeah.
system then is jumping into this like survival mode, and that causes a um, prioritization of all of your body functions to just surviving
Mm,
and not recovering, repairing. And I'll
mm,
even add like that intuition piece, which I think is really more accessible in the rest and digest, right? State versus that survival mode where things feel really quick, really, maybe we're guided a little bit more by fear. And I'm
yes.
making
That's
a
a good way of
generalization
saying it.
here.
No,
Yeah,
but that's a good way of saying it. This is why I tell people we make decisions on fear all the time, and there's nothing really wrong with that.
no,
I mean, it's just what we do, but also there's an extreme end to that too, of course.
right,
Right? I
right.
mean,
Yes, yeah. And then what I think I hear in moms again is the same concept I said earlier of that not staying
mm,
in that phase, but then getting pulled out and drawn out
yeah.
into everyday life. And I've said this before, is like you should be in survival mode when you're in the NICU, right? Like that's a natural, normal
Yes,
response.
that's really good to say that.
Yes, it's so important that
Yes.
moms hear that. Is like that is your body doing what it's supposed to do. And so no shame around that. But what I see happen and what happened to me is that that state then get pulled out into life 6 months down the road, a year down the road. I even talked to a mama on Instagram recently. She was 14 years down the road and was going, oh man, I see so much of what happened to us in the NICU, even
Wow.
getting pulled into today. And like all grief, and it kind of comes up in waves, and then we work through it, and then it comes up in a wave, and then we work through it. And so the healing, the grieving process is not this simple, clear, like one and
Mm,
done. I've done it.
yes.
But it's coming back to it, recognizing how it might still be informing, and then going again, working through it
Well, I mean,
again.
the point you're bringing up is trauma, the
Yes.
trauma
Yes.
looping. Because when
Right.
you say that, I think I had this really severe physical trauma when I was a kid, and it
Mm,
literally looped in my life
that's
forever.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yes.
And I'm going, man, I needed a Tara back when I was like 6 years old.
I needed the tar I am
I
now.
know,
Yeah,
yeah.
10 years ago for
Thinking
sure.
those things to loop, to loop, to loop. So that, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. But I want to say, like, I felt super traumatized by my
Mm,
firstborn, and
mm,
but I've come to a place in my life now, and it's taken a long time. I feel so regulated. I
mm.
feel
Love it.
grounded. I feel the joy of life every day.
Yeah.
Even when I'm sad or worried, it
Right.
doesn't take over. Yeah. I
Yes.
never thought I can get to that place.
Oh, I love
It feels
that.
like a miracle. I was like, and then I
Yeah.
realized like we all have gone through trauma. Like I was born into trauma, like with my own birth story. But then
Mm,
we keep working and by ourselves with practitioners. But I want to hear
mm.
a little bit more. We're coming to the end, but like brain spotting, like can you give it like what is that? What is all this stuff that you yeah.
Yes. So you kind of mentioned, the nervous system stuff. You mentioned minerals a little bit, but like revitalizing the body, because when we experience trauma, it takes so much of our energy
Yes.
stores, our mineral stores. Minerals are, we're just real quick, minerals are protective of the nervous system. So when
Mm,
those I mean, first of all, most of us are deficient in some
yes.
crucial ones to begin with. Then we go through birth, then we go through a traumatic birth, then maybe we're feeding the baby with our body, and drain,
Yes.
right? So a pillar of the NICU Freedom Protocol is also recognizing how can we nourish the body in a way that is practical, in a way that isn't overwhelming. So there's that pillar. And then the last pillar is kind of, uh, we could say more broadly, trauma processing. But if we want to
Mm.
get specific, the modality that I love and am trained in is brain spotting. And that
Yeah.
is using our field of vision and eye fixation to recognize where maybe the trauma capsule, if you would call it, is held
Mm.
in the physical brain.
Is
And
that like
we
EMDR or no?
so it was born out of
Okay.
EMDR, and
Oh,
where
okay.
EMDR uses the eye
Yes, yes,
movement.
yes.
Yeah, Dr. Grand was working with a figure skater, noticed a spot in her field of vision that her eyes were doing this like wobble. And he was like,
Mm.
wait a minute, let me just, and to talk about intuition, let me
Yeah.
just stay here instead of continuing to move and let her stay in the spot.
Oh.
And boom, she had major breakthrough in a an ice skating move that her body
Yeah.
had been injured in. And
Wow, of
so
course, yeah.
yeah. And so I love using brain spotting, especially for birth trauma in NICU families, because when we
Mm.
hit with EMDR, when we move across, we're hitting multiple brain spots. And
Mm.
what I hear a lot from clients is that EMDR, now I'm not knocking EMDR, EMDR is wonderful and beautiful and can be the right modality for a lot of people. But what I hear with birth trauma is that they get really flooded in the EMDR process. And
Mm.
what I know because of brain spotting is like, yeah, of course, you're hitting all of these spots. We might have a
Mm.
spot around my body, right? And
Oh,
my
yeah.
failure, right? And then we might have another spot about hospital staff or how I was treated or how I didn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
the mother. And then we have
Yeah.
another spot about baby, right? And
Wow, yeah,
baby's
yeah.
health, right? And so if we hit all of that, we're going to be,
Wow,
wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
so
That's a
much.
really good point. True.
Yeah,
Because everyone has their own little triggers, right?
exactly.
It's like, oh, the nurses weren't there enough, but maybe that person they never had the care that they need. It's so interesting how we do
Yes.
that, and then it's a whole other, yeah, that's a lot of layers.
It's a lot of layers, yeah. And
Yeah.
so with the NICU families and birth trauma families, I like to go really slow, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe we just focus on one of those brain spots in a session and let your brain unravel around that.
Mm,
And then the other week we find another one, right? And we can go. What I love to with clients is of course, they show up so differently, right? So
yeah.
where one people might hit three spots in a session, activate really strongly and quickly, and then come
Yeah.
down really quickly. Another person, they might just hit one, and it
Yeah.
takes them a minute to go into it and get there,
Mm.
and it's a slower process. And so brain spotting is very intuitive in that way of like we can really move at the client's pace.
That feels important what you just said because I feel like we're in a culture of like Amazon's going to be here in 24 hours or I want to click something. And when you just said that, it felt so beautiful. I can feel how
Mm.
you help people and your energy.
Mm.
And it's like we're not just going to cookie cutter you out. It's like you're going to tune into that client and go, wow,
Yeah.
wow, okay, they're hitting all these blocks, they're releasing, that's them. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
someone
That's
else
right.
is like, oh, they need more. Because I've seen that with women I've worked with. I can see their nervous system. And
Yes,
I could tell what I'm going to share and say
that's right.
if they're in dysregulation, they don't even know it. But
Right.
I realize that's why I record my sessions. I'm like, they're not going to hear a lot of things I say. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
very gentle because I'm not there like you. I don't leave people traumatized, which there's a
Exactly.
lot in this field of
Yeah.
somatic work that people that are untrained leave people
Mm-hmm.
disorganized,
Yeah.
traumatized. And
Yeah. Too
because
fast, too quick. Yes.
like and then like we have to be able to know how to hold the space with people. Like there's no rush to a finish line is what I'm saying, everybody. We
Exactly.
want to take, like I'm coming into this more regulated person and it took me a long time, but I
Mhm.
also am like, wow, like this is where I felt safe enough
That's
to
right.
then go and drop down almost like another level of my
Yes.
being and then
Yes.
drop down another. There's no way I could have forced that. And that feels important because women I work
Mhm.
with that have infertility or that have
Mhm.
had miscarriage, multiple miscarriage. They just want to
Mm.
get through it. And I'm
Yes.
not about like, I go, the past is here no matter what. I said,
Mm.
so it's what we do in the present with those pieces.
Mhm.
And that's why I would think the NICU, I could see why people would be uncomfortable or unsure, but
Right.
also is like, I don't know. It's like that would be so meaningful because it's like you're
Mm.
getting the somatic body psychology piece
That's right.
really a blessing for the family and the babies. Like
Mm,
this is, I'm saying this because I feel like you don't want your baby to have lifelong trauma. And I'm going to be a little bold here. You're going to
mm,
have to do some physical, emotional, energetic work at that birth
that's
experience,
right. That's right.
like getting pokes, getting, spinal
Mhm,
taps and things that,
mhm.
they can disperse and heal through that energy the best they can. But if parents don't know it and they
Yeah.
don't set it up, you know what? You may have a kid that has behavioral issues,
Yes.
misdiagnoses of like,
Yep.
oh, there's something wrong with them, or they're
Yes.
mentally breaking. I don't
Mhm,
believe that infants and children especially that they have mental instability at all. I
mhm.
go, let's go back and see what was their birth like.
Yeah,
And you know what?
absolutely. Yeah.
99.9% had a really treacherous birth foundation.
Mm,
And then
yes.
you go, well, nobody looks at that except birthpsychology.org is bringing it into the
Mm,
global. And it's like, let's look at
amazing.
that with love and
Yeah,
compassion in a way where it's like our children are the future, you know?
that's right. That's right. Yeah, we see an increase, right, in autism and ADHD and all of these really heavy hitting diagnoses that show up in behavior day in and day out. And I am thankful, like you're saying, there seems to be this movement towards integration where we're
Yeah.
not just going like, well, that's just something you're stuck with for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Locally here in Bozeman, Montana, I have an amazing chiropractor, and she's even doing chiropractic work for nervous system regulation.
I love that.
Hallelujah, right? Like, so how can
Yes.
we find something like that? How can we increase our minerals or our nutrient dense food? And how can we maybe process through the trauma so that we can get that infant, kiddo, and mom and dad to the household to a place of peace and calm on a regular basis? That's the goal.
You would appreciate this. I saw this film 18 years ago in my studies, pre-perinatal psychology. We were kind of interlinking in classes. I was in somatic psychology emphasis program, and
Mm,
we were all sitting together, and they showed this film of a mother, and this
mm,
was in Santa Barbara, Ray Castellino days. Like he did all this
okay.
like deep, well, I don't know if you know, yeah, this
Yes.
work. And they literally physically showed it on camera. The baby had bow-legged. The
Mm,
mother said she was bow-legged. As the mother was processing her shit, like this was unbelievable. The
yeah.
baby's legs, literally, you saw them going like this, and you're like, I wish I could
Just.
remember this film. It stuck with me so deeply, and I wasn't even interested in that field because I had trauma. So I was like
Yes.
keeping it on the edge
So
of
much.
learning because I was
Mhm.
scared. I didn't realize it until I went through and where I was like, wow, you're really avoidant of
Yeah.
that whole field. And I ended up
Yes.
deep. I had to get to my own
Yeah.
regulation, but watching the baby's legs like go like how is that?
Yes. Yeah. We know with fascial work as
Yeah.
well that as mom, and I've lived this as personally, having such tight, intense
Yeah.
fascia. I actually had my tongue tie released about 3 or 4 years ago,
Wow.
and which has
Okay.
been great. It was life changing, but also I didn't know it at the time. That is one piece, and I have to also work and release the tension in the
Yeah.
other fascia of my jaw or my skull, right, in this space.
Yeah.
But then to see almost all my children also have tight fascia,
Oh,
and
interesting.
as
Yes.
I've worked on opening, I can see some changes in them. So there's this,
Wow.
yeah, it's really,
Yeah.
really
Mom is the heartbeat,
interesting.
you said
Mom's a
earlier.
heartbeat.
I
Yeah.
get that. What was the other saying? Mom is it the sun or the earth and everything revolves around her?
Mm.
And then I
Mm.
honestly know my mood and my energy dictates everybody,
That's
even my
right.
husband, even my brother.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yes.
everybody. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. I'm like, they're lucky that I'm in a
Mm.
pretty good self-care mode in my life right
Mm.
now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
I
all
think of
like, what's happening? Like,
yeah, yeah. I think
yeah,
about how we're designed, right,
yeah,
as women and the um, maybe I'll say the ability, right, to be that more, a little bit more naturally aware of the
yes, yes.
community dynamics. Yeah, and I could hear that and feel really pressured, right?
Mm,
Um, and like you're saying, I think I've come to a place where I'm really honored now of like,
mm,
whoa, like
yeah.
I get to be that, right? I get to be that presence. I get to be that peace. Now, am I always feeling that way? No, absolutely not. But like you said, I've gotten to come to this place where that's how I
Yeah.
feel. That's the relationship with it more often now, and I'm thankful for that.
So I want you to share just, ways that people can find you in your program and everything. I know
Yes.
we'll have to have you on again. We didn't talk about the mineralization, but you
Oh,
can find
yes.
that on the website. Yeah.
Yes. So my website, of course, is my name, Atara, Atara Parkinson, Parkinson.com. I have a blog there with some great information about minerals, about nervous system, about brain spotting. And then I'd say I'm most active on Instagram, and that's Atara.Parkinson. And then my NICU page is just at NICU Freedom. And there's a lot of information about nervous system and the impact of the NICU on mom and dyad. And I also love YouTube because I get to speak in longer format because this work isn't, it's hard to get into a 30-second reel, all that you want to say on a topic. So that's also just my name, Atara Parkinson, and you can find that information there too.
So thank you so much for being here. Any final words for those that are just in that space, like any love
Yeah.
messages?
Yes, I would just say that you can find light and hope, and because there's such darkness and heaviness when you're in the process. And so know that even while you're there, that you can find these micro moments to connect with yourself, with your baby, with that light and hope that's there, that exists on the other side at the end. You could say at the end of the tunnel, right? And that there's also just a beautiful community of NICU parents. There's
Mm,
lots of resources. So if the only reason you're reaching out to me is to find resources, please do so,
mm.
because there's lots of group work around NICU support, and of course the NICU Freedom Protocol. If you're ready to move through that, that's available for you as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is really amazing to connect and share. I feel like we have so much more well, to be continued for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kelly.
And thank you all for joining episode 246, May, Motherhood After the NICU, Supporting Body, Mind, and Soul. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly Meehan. Please join my community and stay in touch with monthly energy rants, Spirit Baby poetry, and get access to Spirit Baby 101 with tips and practices at my newsletter at newearthchildren.com. And join me on Instagram with lives at Spirit Baby Medium, and join the Mighty Networks, the Spirit Baby Collective membership, and Motherhood to Mediumship. Remember, you are the heart that holds communication, and it is your time to connect. Come share in the great shift of your mind and the true spirit of your heart with Spirit Baby Communication.